YouTube? How you feeling? How you living? What's good? It's your girl Francine. Today is Friday, which means it's Fact Friday. We're back on track with my regular scheduled program. So because I've been uploading every single day this week, I decided to kind of give myself a little break for this Fact Friday and talk about something that is very pertinent right now that you may not think is, but it actually really is, like extremely is. And that is the Voter Rights Act. Now, if you don't know what the Voter Rights Act is, it is an act that was signed in 1965, actually 55 years ago yesterday, on August 6, 1965. Now, this is very prominent right now. Number one, because on July 17, 2020, we lost U.S. Rep. John Lewis. If you don't know who John Lewis is, what rock have you been living under? John Lewis was a very prominent person in the civil rights movement. He marched on Selma. He was very close to Martin Luther King. He has been fighting for voting rights since the beginning, since it was established. The Voting Rights Act was established in 1965, and he just recently passed away. And also, like I said, yesterday was the anniversary of this being passed. And since 1965, which is very crazy to me, and I did not know this, some of the things in the Voter Rights Act has actually been taken out and has been struck down, and is now trying to be put back up by the House, but of course with the Senate being very mainly Republican, it's being kind of a problem. So let's talk about the Voter Rights Act and why it's important. Let's get into it. So first, let's get into the history of voting in this country. Now, some of you may not know that before the 1965 Voting Rights Act was signed, though Black people were able to vote, there was a lot of things keeping them from being able to vote, especially in places in the South. There were what they call literacy tests. In order to see if the person was able to read, they would ask them really complicated questions like, how many counties are in this state, or can you recite the Constitution by heart? Like things that I can't even do, and I have a law degree. But back in these times, a lot of Black people were unable to read and be unable to kind of go to school because of poverty and oppression. And so, especially since at this time, there were still Jim Crow laws, they were still separate but equal. So of course, they weren't able to go to the same schools as them and their white counterparts. And a lot of times, they didn't go to school at all. And so at this point, there was a lot of things that were holding Black people from able to vote because they were being turned away if they didn't pass these literacy tests. And so at that point, you know, it was also the civil rights movement. There was a lot of fight going on, not only just for voting rights, but for civil rights in general. But the Voting Rights Act was signed in 1965 by Lyndon B. Johnson in order to essentially give Black people the ability to exercise their fundamental right. So what the Voting Rights Act did was it banned literacy tests, thankfully. It also made poll taxes illegal in federal elections, and eventually down the line, the U.S. Supreme Court in 1966 banned poll taxes in state and local elections as well. And one thing that the Voting Rights Act did that is very prominent is that it made certain states that were very prone to discrimination to have to go through federal approval in order to change their voting rights laws. And so at that point, you know, it was essentially like, look, we are banning these things, but in order to prevent even further discrimination in the future, we want to make sure that these states have to go through us so that we can clear what you are doing, so we won't show that it's discriminatory. And so, you know, that was how it was from 1965. And then in 2013, a very prominent case happened called Shelby County versus Holder. And in this case, the Supreme Court held in a 5-4 split that the federal government does not have to approve certain voting rights laws by certain states. They said that wasn't necessary anymore, that, you know, we've gotten past the 1965 racism, and that it's not necessary for the federal government to extend its power over states in order to inhibit their state local laws, right? Now, you and me may know that that's not 100% true, but apparently the Supreme Court felt as though that was where they were leaning. And so, literally right after that happened, many of states, 25 states to be exact, started implementing very discriminatory laws that on their face didn't look discriminatory, but after looking at how it impacted their voting, It did. And some of these I knew and some of these I did not know were a thing. One thing I knew very well is the voter ID law. So in a lot of states, you have to have a valid and current ID in order to vote. And I talked about that yesterday in the sense that you have to have an address, you have to have a place they have to prove where you live. And that can be very discriminatory. Unfortunately, in a lot of areas of poverty and people of color, unfortunately, there's not very much ability to get to like a DMV to go to even get a state ID. In certain places, you can do it online. I don't know, here in Georgia, you can, but you have to go the first time to actually take the picture and do all that. And a lot of people don't have transportation. A lot of those areas, there's issues with actually being able to pay for it. And so a lot of people don't have voter IDs, or they have they don't have IDs in general, or they have IDs that are expired, or they have IDs that may not be valid, and then they can't vote, right? And that can be somewhat discriminatory because it usually affects people of color a lot more. And another thing that I talked about yesterday was banning felons from being able to vote. And that in and of itself is just horrible. I think that, like I said, if you do your time, you should be able to be restored back to your civil rights, as they say. But that definitely is unproportionately affecting people of color. And if we can go into the very long history of people of color being more likely to end up with felony charges than their white counterparts, the fact that people of color are policed more and so they end up in jail more often than their white counterparts, and things of that nature. So a lot of the times when you're banning felons from being able to vote, you're most likely banning people who have been in a system that has already been racist and discriminatory in and of itself, and now you're not even allowing them to do their fundamental rights. Another thing that was implemented after the Shelby v. Holder case was a lot of closing polling places. They were closing places, and they were kind of essentially intentionally putting polling places in places where they knew that more people who were able to afford transportation were able to get there. People in certain neighborhoods couldn't make it there on the bus, and so they knew that they knew what they were doing. Okay, like I said, it doesn't look discriminatory on its face, but after you kind of look into it, it's like, kind of looks like it may be affecting people of color even more. And another thing that I didn't really know was being done, and I didn't know, I can't believe I didn't know this was a thing, and that's purging voting rolls. Now, if you haven't voted in an election in a very long time, I would highly suggest that you check and see if you're still registered, because apparently in a lot of states, Georgia being one of them, and that was a big deal during the time of Governor Kemp's election, was that they were purging a lot of people off of the voter roll, because if you haven't voted in I think it's 5 to 6 years, they'll take your name off of voter registration completely. Which to me is blatant discrimination, because yes, this person may not have voted in the last couple elections, but their vote still counts later on down the line, and they may not even know that they're not even registered to vote, and then they go to vote and they can't. And it's very, not even just discriminatory against people of color. I can't understand how that's even legal, but that's another video for another day. So like I said, the Shelby County v. Holder case kind of stripped a lot of what was important from the Voting Rights Act. A lot of states decided that they wanted to make these laws right afterwards, which I'm sure they were just waiting for that to happen. And so now there's a lot of voter suppression going on that may not seem like it, but really is. And now that's obviously been a thing. The House, which is mostly democratically run, has been trying to pass the bill called the Voting Rights Advancement Act. And what that is, essentially, it's just going back to before Shelby County v. Holder, and essentially saying, look, we have to control these states, because these states obviously are going to make intentionally discriminatory laws to prevent voting. Now, you may feel however you want to about voting, but I always say, if they don't want you to do it, there's a reason why. There's a reason why they make voting hard. There's a reason why they make certain things hard for us to do, because they know the power that it has. And so at the end of the day, you can think that voting doesn't count, but at the end of the day, voting is a right that we have gotten and fought for years. And unfortunately, even to this day, we still have to continue to fight to have the right to have equal rights to vote. And so with that being said, I'm going to get off my high horse here, and I'm going to just say, there's a runoff election here in Georgia. I'm definitely going to be voting in November. Please vote. The thing about voting, and I'm going to kind of give my own opinion, is that, when it comes to politics, I'm not the most loving of either party, to be quite honest, but I know that my right to vote has been fought for, has been strived for by my ancestors, people who have died for me to be able to vote. And so I do it every year. I do it because I know that they don't want me to vote for a specific reason. They know the power that it has. They know what it means when we're going to get involved in our politics and get educated about our politics and understand what's going on behind the scenes. And so I would encourage you to look into your voting rights in your state. If you haven't voted in a while and you want to vote for this election, please make sure you're registered to vote, even though you've registered to vote before. Just make sure that you are able to put your voice out there, because at the end of the day, I mean, I live in Georgia. It could go either way here. Most of the time it goes a certain way, but you know what, the way things are right now, the fact that Stacey Abrams almost won the governor's election shows me that there's people in the state that actually are trying to change what's going on here, and they're trying their best to make sure we can't. With the fact that they have election machines that aren't working, the fact that they're purging people from the registry, the fact that they are making it so that certain people can't vote in certain counties unless they have an ID, they're making sure that you can't vote for a reason. So with that being said, or let me not say making sure you can't vote, but making sure it's hard for you to vote for a reason. And like I said yesterday, it's not just a few coincidences of things going on. Sometimes it all makes sense once you put everything together, right? So with that being said, I will see y'all tomorrow. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, put them in the comment section below. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. I will be in your face a lot this week and next week, and maybe the next weck. We'll see how this goes. I might do a whole month of uploading every single day. I'm not sure. It's a very great outlet for me. I'm just in this house by myself, so I ain't got nothing else to do. So with that being said, I will see y'all tomorrow. Bye.